The dust stays on the boot. At first, it looks insignificant. A gray stain. Nothing more. The astronaut keeps moving. The suit keeps working.
We have visual confirmation
The
of seal
checklist continues.
contamination.
Then the dust refuses to stay outside. The astronaut keeps moving. Nothing appears wrong. A gloved hand brushes across a suit joint. The kind of small motion nobody would notice twice. A thin layer of gray transfers into the fold. The joint still bends normally. The suit still looks sealed. It sits in the crease of the glove. Along the edge of the joint, a faint film begins collecting near the visor rim. The surface is no longer only under the astronaut's feet, it is riding on the equipment. Apollo astronauts saw the same thing during lunar surface walks that lasted only a few hours. Dust came back with them. It crossed the boundary that was supposed to separate the mission from the moon. For a while, the view does not change much. The astronaut walks. The suit moves. Nothing attacks. Nothing breaks. Yet the gray coating is still there. That is the part that starts to feel wrong. The suit appears protected. The environment appears outside it. But one small contact has already connected the two. The dust stays attached after the movement stops. In a close fold of the glove, gray grains sit packed into the crease like they belong there, turning part of the suit into something that looks a little more like the moon itself. The walk continues. A knee bends, straightens, bends again. Nothing dramatic happens, yet the fold of the suit no longer looks quite as clean as it did a few minutes earlier. Fine gray material sits along the moving fabric, collecting wherever the motion repeats. On the lunar surface, every step keeps part of the moon with you. The astronaut reaches for a tool.
All connection points on the pallet are secure and
The glove
operational.
closes around the handle. The motion works. The tool is secured.
Inspection
But the
complete.
fingers seem to
Systems
finish
are
the
nominal.
movement a fraction later than expected. Not enough to stop the task, just enough to notice if you keep watching. The handle comes back gray. Another task follows. Another grip. Another release. A thin line drags across the visor under direct sunlight. It catches the light for a moment, then disappears unless the angle changes. Apollo astronauts later described lunar dust as abrasive, not simply dirty. Looking at the visor, it becomes easier to understand why. The moon offers no rain, no wind, no moisture. Lunar daylight lasts about 14 Earth days, and lunar night lasts about 14 more. Nothing arrives to clear the surface away. The boot tread keeps meeting the ground. The glove keeps closing around tools. The suit keeps functioning. Yet
Station
every
1 is showing
contact
dust
leaves something
accumulation
behind.
again.
By the time the astronaut grips the next tool, gray residue has settled into the finger joints, and the hand still closes around the handle. Just not quite the same way it did before. A brush passes across the suit exterior. Gray traces disappear from the surface. The motion is methodical, almost routine. On the lunar
All
surface,
systems appear stable under current
calm
inspection
can look like
conditions.
safety.
Identical equipment crosses from sunlight
The
into
inspection
shadow.
continues
Surface
under
brightness
hard
and dust
sunlight.
visibility change.
Seals are checked. Contact points are examined. A hatch area is reviewed for contamination. Nothing stands out. Nothing demands attention. The suit looks cleaner than it did a few minutes ago. Nearby instruments remain within normal limits. Apollo crews worked through similar surface checklists during their time on the moon. Looking at the
All
process,
automated systems
it is easy
appear
to
stable
understand
after
why
repeated inspection
the environment
cycles.
offers almost no
Subtle
natural
dust
structure of
patterns
its
are
own.
visible near contact
Order
zones.
has to be created deliberately, one step at a time. No clouds form, no wind moves across the ground, no distant motion breaks the view. In 1/6 of Earth's gravity, movement feels possible, even comfortable compared to what the landscape suggests. The astronaut pauses. Readings remain normal. The suit appears operational. The equipment appears operational. Against the still gray horizon, the inspection seems complete. For a moment, the mission feels organized. The checklist is
reading your
complete.
telemetry, Odyssey.
The
Houston is
displays
reading
look
your
normal.
telemetry, Odyssey.
For a moment, it seems reasonable to think the situation is under control. On the lunar surface, inspection only sees part of the danger. A status panel shows stable internal conditions. Numbers remain where they should be. Nothing in the readout suggests urgency. The astronaut continues working beside equipment that has already passed review. Then the scene separates into two different realities. One side of a metal surface sits in direct sunlight. The other remains inside a sharp black shadow. They touch the same piece of equipment, only inches apart. Yet NASA measurements of the lunar environment show conditions that can swing from roughly 120 degrees Celsius in sunlight to around minus 130 degrees Celsius in darkness. Nothing about the view announces it. Sunlight strikes the surface directly, while nearby shadow drops into extreme cold. A warning appears. Not because the checklist was skipped, not because the equipment was neglected. The earlier inspection solved the problems it could see. The environment had continued acting through something else. The suit remains operational. The surface remains quiet. Looking back at the still horizon, it no longer feels the same way it did a few minutes earlier. The calm never moved. Only its meaning changed. The astronaut is gone from the frame. Footprints remain in the dust. A faint coating still sits along a seal. Equipment stands where it was left. Nothing rushes in to erase the evidence. Nothing changes after the work stops. On the lunar surface, Earth can be visible and still too far away. Above the horizon, home hangs in the black sky. It is only about 384,000 kilometers away, close enough to see clearly, close enough to recognize immediately. Yet in the foreground, the same hard sunlight strikes the ground. The same black shadows remain. The same silent surface waits exactly as it did before anyone arrived. Apollo surface footage carries this feeling again and again. Human activity enters the frame. Human activity leaves the frame. The landscape does not respond. Looking back across everything that happened, the dust was not an interruption. The temperature was not an interruption. The exposure was not an interruption.
But the dust is back.
They were the normal condition. The footprints stay where they were pressed into the ground. Earth remains visible above them. The horizon remains still.
Suit and equipment remain stable after the third
The
inspection
surface
cycle.
keeps its dust,
Disregard
its
that,
vacuum,
the dust patterns have
its light
reappeared
and shadow.
simultaneously across the entire site.
Human control remains only where human systems can maintain it. Everywhere else, the moon stays exactly what it was before the mission began. Near does not mean safe.